Hi, welcome to the Taking Control of Your Diabetes podcast. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Jeremy Pettis. I'm joined as always by
Dr. Steve Edelman.
And importantly today, we have our first ever guest on the TCOAD podcast. That is Dr. Jennie Luna. Say hi, Jennie.
Hi, everyone. I am so honored to be the first guest.
You should be. It's a very, very important honor.
We don't let anybody on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That I know.
Like literally, we have not let anybody on the show.
No, you have to be really cool, good, smart, and you got to have the whole package.
Oh, you guys are so sweet.
I'm a little upset that I'm farther away than usual from you, Steve.
Yeah,
Jennie's in the middle here.
I
But
know.
anyways, our topic today is on globally on weight,
Yeah.
weight loss, kind of the issues, so many issues around weight in general. We just completed a TCOAD live broadcast, which was actually the three of us, talking kind of nuts and bolts about weight management, what the issues are around weight, and, some of the new medications, kind of more of a doctor talk, if you will.
Right.
And we wanted to use this medium to get into some, the more conversation around it.
Right.
And I think a good place to start is by telling us who you are,
Okay.
a little of your background, maybe where you grew up, and then ultimately how you got into being a weight loss specialist.
Okay. Well, yeah. So I'm an endocrinologist in training, and, I'm from Dominican Republic, which is a beautiful island. We were just talking about all the awesome places to go before we went on air. Have two beautiful daughters, keep me going, my two motivators of life, obviously. And yes, I started the journey of obesity medicine, I would say shortly right after training, when you realize you're out of that, training or academic setting where everything is beautiful, right? You have amazing mentors, you're learning so much, and then you start private practice, which is, quote unquote, the real world. You're seeing 20 patients a day, 15 minutes per patient, and, your goal is to try to get, like for my patients with diabetes, get them at a good glycemic control. So yeah, blood sugars are great, A1C 6.3%, but then I looked at the patient and they're gaining weight. They're, obviously they're telling me I don't feel well. I know my blood sugars are okay, but I'm not comfortable with my weight. It keeps going up. My knees are hurting. So
when you were in your training, like your fellowship, did you know that this is where you wanted to land?
It's I've always had a fascination. I even gave an entire lecture on the adipose tissue or the fat cell. I found that actually
That was Steve.
I know,
That was Steve.
I don't know. I just love it. So everyone's got their niche. So yeah, I was always fascinated by it, but I didn't really think that was going to be what I was going to do.
Well, and I'm asking
Yeah.
because, you and I did our training kind of at similar times, which wasn't that
Right.
long ago. And it really wasn't a well-defined specialty that you could go into.
No.
So, I mean, there wasn't, you mentioned mentors, but there wasn't a lot, even 10 years ago of kind of these weight clinics.
Right.
So it's only a relatively new thing that people are even thinking that they can make a career out of.
Right.
It was always kind of a side hustle.
Exactly.
And so now so tell us a little bit about that. So out of training, you went into more kind of general endocrine and now, or just more recently, specializing, right?
Yes, yeah. So when I was seeing the struggles, let's say that my patients were going through, I'm like, okay, something's got to give. I started doing pretty much every possible training that I could to really feel well-rounded. So I took classes to become a health coach. I took culinary classes in New York City. I then at that point I learned about the obesity associations, and
let me ask, were these things kind of supported when you told faculty members, hey, I'm taking this wellness coach thing, where they were like, you're weird?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Everyone's like, Jennie, this is just a job. You should. I'm like, this is not just a job. This is, we're taking care of patients here. These are, my mom is a type 2 diabetic, and, I treat my patients like I were to treat my family. So, this is what I would expect any colleague to do as well. So, yeah, a lot of people were like, that's so weird that you have this interest.
And you had to go out and look for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when I went to Obesity Week, it was
Obesity Week.
Yeah.
Well, you can't just
missed
say
that.
that like that's
I went
the
to
thing.
Spam Week.
Yeah.
No, it was a conference.
Okay.
It was a conference.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It was a conference.
Okay,
Yeah.
where was it?
It was a medical. It was in Maryland, and
Mardi Gras Obesity.
Yeah.
yeah, I know. Yeah, it was a medical conference, and I found people just like me. I felt like, you know, the ugly duckling that just met their group of people, and there were just lectures from, you know, other doctors talking about the mechanism behind weight gain, and it was just so rewarding. I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is what gives me life, to actually implement this on my patients. And you know, then I created a comprehensive program. I started implementing this in my practice, and you know, patients were losing weight. And now with all the other medications, having that perspective and now that type of style, let's say, to take care of the patients, it was so rewarding, not only for the patient to lose the weight and to feel healthy and feel good, but for me as their doctor, it's been priceless.
And you can't just say, try this drug, lose
Right.
30 pounds, come back.
Right.
And what we heard on the TCOID Live, which is on our website, you take a multidisciplinary approach, getting to know the patient, what their own personal desires are, and
Right.
that sets them up for success.
And I think that's
Right.
worth talking about because, you know, out of my training and again, everybody's, is that you're not really equipped with tools to deal with weight. You don't have a multidisciplinary team. So what has that journey been like for you, that let's say fresh out of fellowship, that you were seeing patients and you probably had to deal with weight on your own,
Yes.
to where you are now and what like a multidisciplinary clinic really looks like and what that means?
Right. Yes, that's a great question, because it
Thanks.
was really
I wrote that one.
yeah,
Steve.
that was really good. Yeah, because it was hard. It was so hard. I felt like I needed to learn everything, so I felt like I needed to know about about nutrition, how to do coaching, and I did. I learned all of that, the cooking, and I actually did create my own startup. It was called NIDO, where I worked with patients and clients, you know, on helping them losing weight.
NIDO?
NIDO, yeah.
Does it stand for
that was the
something?
website that you had.
Yes. And we had a, you know, YouTube channel and cartoons.
What does
and
it mean again?
It means nest in Spanish.
Okay.
So in Spanish you would say nido.
Okay.
And it's a, you know, a place of new beginnings and of community and trust. So it was a lonely road, but then knowing that, and actually I'm grateful for it, because I feel like that really gave me the foundation to then be able to have this conversation with my registered dietitians and with the bariatric surgeon. And, you know, I have that understanding, that base, which is, I feel, has given me a different outlook on how I take care of the patient. That's a little bit different than how other people might approach it. Yes.
So what do you think a clinic needs now to really address all these different issues with a patient? Like if you could design your ultimate kind of weight loss situation for a patient to walk into, what would that look like?
Right. So it would have to definitely include someone that is passionate about talking to people about food. So it could be a registered dietitian, could be a certified health coach, but someone that's going to be able to take the time to not just give a list to the patient. I feel like that's a common practice.
And not just the plastic, like rice
Right,
food models.
right,
And things. I mean,
no.
those can be helpful, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. Someone who really kind of gets into it. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, and for sure. And someone that also understands the different ethnicities. And, you know, for instance, someone from the Caribbean, like where I'm from, eats very different, let's say, from someone from Japan. So to having that flexibility, I think is important. And you know,
And that really is important. And see, we
Right.
always make a big deal that, you know, kind of changes to your diet have to be within your cultural preferences. You know, telling people, like, you know, that they just can't eat rice anymore.
Right.
You know, it's
Right.
not really acceptable. Like there has to be ways around it, of limiting it, of doing alternatives. So that's great.
Exactly. Yes.
I bet you having some experience as a clinical psychologist has to be helpful, because
Yes, that too.
I mean, talk about some of the reasons why people gain weight. I mean, there's, you know, is it from their childhood? Is it from depression? Is it from having a bad spouse? I mean, it probably a ton of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much everything you mentioned definitely does influence weight. So I've heard stories from patients, that tell me that when they were kids, they were bullied and, because they were overweight. And then that just kind of fed the cycle because it's a sense of hopelessness. Like, well, this is just me. This is my destiny. Or being in an abusive relationship too. I've had, I had a female patient where, she was assaulted as a teenager and she didn't want to lose weight because she never wanted someone to do that to her again. But then she wanted to lose weight for health reasons. So they're having a clinical
constant internal struggle.
Yes,
you can't
yes,
win. Yeah.
yes. So having someone, clinical psychologist there to kind of help and walk them through that while everyone else is doing their part too.
And what does that mean? Is that somebody you can walk down the hall and say see this person, or again, how's that clinic kind of set up that?
Yes. It's pretty much, like that. Someone, a behaviorist that can kind of really dig in if there's some issue there that needs to be kind of addressed. So, yeah.
But that kind of clinic is rare.
It is, yeah. I worked in a place in the East Coast that had all of that, so we were very spoiled, and it was so nice because we would actually have monthly meetings where we would discuss patients and how is this patient doing, and it is rare, but that's where we kind of refer patients to our local colleagues and things that might have an interest in weight management.
And I've seen people who have weight problems, and it boils down to their parents were super heavy.
Yeah.
Parents like to eat rich, fatty, inflammatory foods,
Yes.
As we learned on our last TCOID Live. And that's what they're brought up with. And it's really, it's goes from one generation to the next.
Right.
So you have to break that cycle.
And that dovetails in a question you wrote, Steve, is great. Is willpower to blame? Which again, like you have alluded to, comes up all the time that people are just kind of told that they're not strong-willed or they're just lazy, or so. How much work do you have to do when you first meet a patient to kind of convince them that you're on their side? Because even when patients come to see me for diabetes, they know I have type 1. They're usually very defensive, and it takes a while to kind of win them over, to be honest. So how do you navigate those first meetings?
Yeah, I mean, I think also it starts even with body language and what you say and listening. I feel like I usually start to say, how can I help you? It's kind of more of a conversation, not so much of, I think you need to do this and this and this and this. It's never
empathy.
Yes, yeah, and having that compassion. And I mean, you can't really, you really can't fake that. So, if you're in weight management, you're in this because you really love to do it. So when patients come in, they're aware of that as well. So yeah, I mean, it's just working with them and for them to know that it is a safe space and that we're there to support them through the process. And then explaining to them what are the factors after listening to their story that's actually influencing their weight. And it's usually not the diet. It's, mom and dad were overweight, or, there's other maybe medications that are promoting weight gain. So all those things I feel like make a big difference to discuss.
And I'm guessing there's a lot of tears, that come in. It's interesting because even again in diabetes, that patients start to open up, and it's very common for people to get emotional and tearful because they're carrying with them so much guilt, and they're working hard, and when that comes up and those emotions, you kind of let people have their moment with that. Like you help them through it, or
just to have their moment. And sometimes it's probably the first time they ever told someone else about it. So, and they feel really good at the end. I mean, sometimes the first visit is just getting to know the patient. I like to allow that space, not to be like, okay, well then now let's talk about the medication. No, so we basically allow that space for them to just let it all out. We know what's going on and how you're feeling, and then move forward with that. Because, there is a lot of stigma around weight. So, they've probably seen a provider already that's told them you need to lose weight, and not in a nice way, too.
Yeah, we're working against, your patients, Jeremy. They've had doctors who just give them grief.
Right.
And so they're used to that, and they walk in very hesitant.
There is an increased risk of depression when patients are struggling with weight, when they have obesity. And it's because they enter this state of hopelessness where it's like, I'm eating healthy, I'm doing what my doctor's telling me to do, I'm doing what I see on television, but I'm not losing weight. So they feel stuck. It's like there's nothing they're doing that's right, and they give up. So it's a vicious cycle, and they notice maybe now my blood sugar is going up, and now my blood pressure, and my doctor just keeps putting on more medication. So that in itself leads to this kind of state of hopelessness. So there is an increased risk for depression. Yeah.
Do the antidepressants we usually use, do they help with that type of depression related to weight?
Yeah, so that's interesting. There have been studies actually showing that because of the chronic inflammation that there is in obesity, it can cross the blood-brain barrier and actually decrease the effectiveness of the antidepressants. So, just putting them on antidepressants, which sometimes can cause weight gain, some of them do, might not help. So, treating the root of the problem, kind of taking that approach more comprehensive and holistic is more beneficial. And, if they need to, there's, for instance, medications that are for weight loss that have mix of like bupropion and naltrexone, Contrave, that sometimes can help with both.
So as I'm listening, I'm thinking like, how has your emotions around this changed over time? I'm thinking about how you felt kind of at the end of the day, let's say 5 years ago versus now. Like, are you seeing, we just talked about new medications on the TCOID Live, which we can talk about more. How's the energy around this space changing? How is patient attitudes? How's your attitude changing?
Yeah. Oh, it's great. It's it's fun because now it's something we're doing together, and they're losing weight. Now there's so many options too that we're approaching the lifestyle, but now there are medications that are going to help. And then they come back and they're like, oh my God, I lost 5 pounds and I feel really good and I'm able to fit in my old pants again. So there's a lot of, it's no longer like, oh, this is terrible, I don't know what we're, it's more of now, let's do this, and it's totally doable. And so there's more support from different avenues. So it's really good.
It seems like you just need to get the ball rolling.
Right,
lose
right.
a bit of weight, and then you add on to that.
Yes. Issues sometimes in relationships is, and we see this with diabetes too, where sometimes the family or the spouse or the friend becomes like the food police, and it's like, oh, should you be eating that? And, that causes a lot of conflict because the last thing that person needs is an external voice telling them something they keep telling themselves throughout the entire day.
And that can just immediately change the dynamic of a relationship from like, we're intimate to like, you're my mom or dad, or like, sorry, go on.
Oh no. Yeah. Where you're being lectured at. And we see it too with our patients. With
I just got lectured at actually by Steve and Jenny before we started this for my diet. And I don't feel good about it.
I didn't do anything. It was Steve.
No.
Steve literally said I radiate. I glow at night from the inflammation of all the pro-inflammatory foods I eat. Which I ordered a keto bowl for lunch now. Which now
he wants
also
to
not
impress
happy
you,
about.
Jenny.
He did. You did really good.
I did.
That was great.
Yeah, thank you.
That was great.
I feel less glowy.
Even though we covered this on TCOID Live, I thought maybe it might be a good idea to repeat. What are the medications that have been the most successful for you? We've been talking about the GLP-1 receptor agonists,
right?
And maybe just recover those, because that has changed the way we treat diabetes type 2, and that's also the way you're treating weight problems. Oh
yeah. So this is the beauty of practicing this now because of the options. So with the GLP-1 agonists, like there's the side of diabetes with Trulicity and Victoza, Bydureon, and Ozempic. So now to know that that patients have lost so much weight, have improved their glycemic control or their blood sugars, to now being able to use this for weight loss and feel comfortable to do that because we've been using it for years, it feels great. So there's now Wegovy, which came out in June, fantastic medication. I've had patients lose 40 pounds, and patients are just, it increases their quality of life. They feel really, really good, and confident, and they're coming off medications. This is something we have not done unless a person got bariatric surgery, where now we're like cutting down the insulin and their blood pressure medications and things like that. So it's nice to now have this, with Saxenda and Wegovy, where patients are losing a significant amount of weight.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's really cool about these drugs is that they work for diabetes.
Right.
They help people with obesity. They have, cardiovascular protection, potentially like kidney protection, and which is all good for the drug. But the other cool thing about that is that finally we're talking about this as all kind of one thing. Diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease.
Right.
We've always kind of known that, but it's been very siloed. And now people are using words like cardiometabolic alliance and obesity. And because we have things that, treat all these things, we're realizing they're all kind of one thing.
Right, right. Yeah, it's nice you say that. I was in a conference recently, and
Was this Obesity Week?
no, this was another one.
Okay.
This was actually the endocrinology one.
Okay, not as fun as Obesity Week.
Yeah,
Obesity Week
no,
is
they
wild.
did. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that one was really good. So, but it was nice to see like cardiologists talking in the conference and nephrologists talking. It's like we're all now, because of these classes of medications, are becoming one entity. When before is like, oh, I don't know why your cardiologist told you to do that, because this is what you should do, or the nephrologist. We're treating one human. So, so it's nice to have these medications now kind of bringing us together with the SGLT2s, and now the nephrologists using them, and the cardiologists using it now too for heart failure and all that good stuff.
You're right. It's the first time in my career that we're discussing these things with our colleagues from kidney and heart conditions. The other thing I was going to say is I have two, I would say, wives of friends who do not have type 2 diabetes. We got them on a low-dose GLP-1, and we got one approved for Wegovy, which is just the same thing as Ozempic, but higher dose. And the one thing that really helped them was this Ozempic, now called Ozempic Wegovy Facebook group.
Oh, nice.
So it's I don't know if it's mostly women, but I get the impression that it is. It's for people that are on these medications for the primary reason of helping them lose weight.
Nice.
And that apparently has just having a support group while you're going through the titration where you might get a little nausea. Everyone's got their own little tricks how to deal with it.
Right.
So, even though we talked about before that these drugs work centrally in your brain, whether you have, counseling or not, it's nice to have additional support.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I love that patients now have, like Facebook groups and on social media where they support each other. And I have patients come in and say, oh, this person on the group online said this. And I'm like, oh, that's a good point. So it's nice that it goes out of the examining room and now into, other people supporting each other as well.
Well, if you don't mind, tell us, some patient case. And I actually like that testosterone story you told us. I think that's a really good example. So go for it.
Okay. Yeah. So I actually had a consult for a young patient, 35 years old, male patient, who had low testosterone, and because of that, his libido was low. Energy, it was difficult for him to maintain muscle mass when he would go to the gym. So all the symptoms of low testosterone. And when we met, when we had our consult, his BMI was quite high. It was like 38, and I told them we could approach this in different ways. Obviously, we have to rule out that there's not, a tumor in the pituitary and things like that. So we did that kind of a full biochemical evaluation just to make sure there was not something else at root. And after that, I told them we could go by this in two ways. Putting you on testosterone replacement is not going to fix the problem. So I think that we should definitely address your weight, see how you do. Because he felt that if he had the testosterone, everything was just going to get better.
Jenny, could you give people an idea what a BMI of 38 is, like 100 pounds over your ideal body weight? Is that's sort of that range? Yeah.
So he was like 280 around there. So, basic, and he, football player when he was in high school, and, obviously now he's married, has kids, and it's a different life. So basically, when I talked to him about weight management, and I said, let's try this medication. It's called Wegovy, and I'm going to pair you up with my registered dietitian, and just kind of working with that and changing his lifestyle and tweaking his diet. And yeah, he lost 40 pounds. His testosterone went up, and libido was back. His wife came with him to the visit, and she's like, "Thank you."
He didn't have a wife before, right?
No, he did.
Okay.
He did.
Come on, Jeremy. Try to be an adult, okay?
He's so bad. Yeah. So it was great and so rewarding to then see this young guy get his life back, from the weight loss.
I think that's such a great story because obviously somebody saw him, could clearly see this guy had weight issues. And physicians are guilty, too, of wanting the quick fix and saying, well, let's just check your testosterone and we'll give you a shot and everything will be fine. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, look, if we address the root cause, have you lose weight, that your testosterone will improve, you'll sleep better, lower risk of sleep apnea, all these kinds of things can kind of fall in line. Right. So, and I think it starts with that it can be difficult to have that conversation, that when that patient's sitting in front of you, a lot of physicians will still shy away from discussing weight. And I do think that we have an advantage in that way, that especially with you, that people are expecting to talk about weight, just like with us, they're expecting to talk about diabetes. And at least that one barrier is down because people have already made the first proactive step of like, let's talking about this. But anyways, I think that's a great success story. And
and here he is, the dad, he's the husband, he's the father. And
recently married.
Yeah, 2 kids. And despite feeling better, his libido went up, his wife's happier. Yeah. I mean, he's probably doing things with his eating habits that's going to positively affect the whole family.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because then now the kids are in a different environment. He learned about different ways of eating. So it's, usually we do have like the spouse or the person that's cooking, to come to the visits too. So with the registered dietitian. So it's kind of like a ripple effect. One person gets healthy in the household, and then now the kids are more aware. So it's nice to as a provider to feel like you're not only helping the patient, but you're helping also the people around them as well, which is something we didn't have before.
So let me ask you, again, I do mostly type 1 diabetes, and I can identify kind of patient patterns that are some of the more difficult people to help. And is there an equivalent in the obesity world that there's people that, gosh, like it just seems like nothing works, or that there's a patient type that you really struggle with, or kind of common roadblocks maybe that you come across? Yeah,
I mean, it is hard. It all depends on what their experience has been before they come to see us. Have they had a lot of bad experience and they're a little bit jaded with, just the medical system. So it takes a little bit more of, for them to see that it is a different approach. But I feel like everyone, everyone has challenges, but I think that there are ways to work around it.
What are some of the misinformation that's out there? Like when people come in, and you've mentioned it on the TCOID Live that, calories in, calories out, that's the whole story. Right. And, I think there's a lot of people that have crazy ideas about weight loss and what works, what doesn't. What do you hear?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I mean, the quick fix, I would say, is the huge misconception where, you see these commercials. You take this supplement and you'll lose, 40 pounds.
Money back guarantee.
Yeah, money back guarantee.
And you will glow at night. Certain parts of your body
exactly.
will glow.
And then by the time you... You're so funny. By the time you want to get your money guaranteed, the company is probably not even a company anymore. So, that mentality of thinking that there's a quick fix and, I'm going to lose weight quickly, you can't, because it has to be pretty much a re-engineering of the person's patterns and habits and how they live their life. And that takes time. So if we're doing it right to keep the weight off, that's the best approach. And I always tell patients, what you did to lose weight, you have to continue it to keep it off. So if you lost 20 pounds drinking celery juice for 2 weeks, that's not sustainable. It's not.
What if you love celery juice?
There's other problems. It makes you glow at
Jennie,
night.
the other thing too is, I mean, you've mentioned this several times. One size doesn't fit all, because we have the Mediterranean diet, we have the Atkins diet, we have the intermittent fasting diet. And I remember as a kid when I was chubby, I did the apple diet. You ate 8 apples a day. That's it.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, wow.
I lost weight.
Well,
because after the 4th apple, I puked. But you know what? I think what I've learned, and I'm not the expert, but one size doesn't fit all. You got to find the caloric reduction method that fits you. And we talked about intermittent fasting at our break.
Yes. So you're right. I mean, nutrition is so personal, and there are people that thrive on a healthy keto diet or on plant-based or intermittent fasting, which we were discussing is great for weight management, for longevity. I usually like to tell patients, last meal of the day, let's say, could be 5 or 6 p.m. and then, their next meal can be in the morning, like at 9 or 10. So using the nighttime as a good way to keep that fast going helps significantly also with that caloric restriction. So, and of course, in that time window when they are eating, to eat good food. We're not going to be eating, unhealthy foods during that time.
He's pointing at me.
Yes.
So what about this idea? Everybody, people fail diets, quote unquote. I'm doing air quotes right now for all kinds of reasons. But, they go on a diet, they restrict their calories, they get hungry. And, what about this idea that people's weight is set? That if you look at my weight a year ago, it was probably pretty darn close to what it is now. And you think about all the calories I've eaten in a year, that our bodies gravitate towards a certain set point of weight. And how do you reset that? Right.
That's true. Yeah. So we do have a set point, and the body likes to fight to keep it there. So it's, the fat tissue or the adipose tissue is programmed to live. So why? Because if we're in a moment of, fathom, no food, that's our reserve, and that's how we were kind of made. Right?
Was that part of that lecture you gave?
It was so good.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, thank you. I can't. Basically, it's hard because, and this is where the medications come into play.
Yeah.
Because if your body's kind of working against you,
totally,
then now if you start, let's say, the GLP-1 agonist, now your brain is like, I don't want food. So, you're going to have to tap into that fat cell for energy. There's no other way. So, and this is how patients start to see the scale move.
Would you say that, you're so right, Jeremy. It's so hard to change your weight. Everything's fighting to bring you back to that weight. But if you really fight, and I would say it takes a long time, I don't know how long, months, you get to a new lower plateau, and then maybe your lipostat, that's the word I use, equilibrates to that
level. Never heard you use that, but I like it.
I went to Jenny's lecture.
Yeah. But so you can reset, right? And it just takes a amount of time that you're not going to feel like you're starving forever.
Right.
And you're right. The medications can be so helpful. And these drugs, I mean, these GLP-1s, people's appetite just goes down. I mean, I love in the beginning, Steve, when they were getting these drugs approved, remember that they would have people go to a buffet.
Right.
And eat whatever they want and measure their calorie content, and then give them an injection, this GLP-1, another day, and see what they would eat. And it was just drastically less.
Right.
And of course, you're going to lose weight if you're just not as hungry.
Yeah. It takes energy.
It happens. You don't need any counseling for it.
That's a great study.
Of course, getting support is helpful.
Yes, exactly.
So maybe kind of bring us home, Jenny, with some, words of wisdom or encouragement, out there. I think, again, for me, spending this day with you, I'm actually left with hope because these drugs really are effective. We didn't really get into bariatric surgery, but that is there for people. And this is something that if people commit to just addressing, kind of getting rid of some of the shame, and I'm going to go see an expert, I'm going to, address this with medications, that it literally can be life-changing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I tell patients, you have to be your number one advocate. So, feeling like, oh, I have to just depend on my provider, whatever my doctor says, that's what I'm going to do. No, the information's out there. Podcasts like this help patients dramatically, to see what are the options, because, unfortunately, not every doctor is aware of these medications. So then that's a conversation where the patient now feels empowered, and they come in and they say, I want to try this medication. Is this good for me? So again, and then all the support groups out there as well, with like Facebook and other social medias as well. It's a different sense now, more empowering, and there's things that can be done. So
yeah. And I think that's kind of the mantra of TCOYD is
exactly
education, like advocate for yourself and don't be afraid. If your doctor says doctors don't like saying I don't know,
right.
But if they can say, well, then can you refer me to somebody or somewhere I can go, or do your own kind of Google searches. Maybe a way to kind of end it. Like, what if someone's sitting in rural Nebraska right now and they feel like they don't have the resources? Like, where do they start?
Yeah, I mean, online, there's so many options. So, we talked about a platform called Noom. I mean, there's so many platforms available now where people can integrate into a lifestyle program to help them lose weight. And there's so much content too. Here also, this is a great way of learning, and then to learn more online and then present it to their provider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do have online at tcoid.org our video vault, and you actually did a lecture, I think, with Steve on
has
weight
a
loss.
lecture there, yeah.
So it's free, all completely free video content on everything, diabetes medications, weight loss medications, all that. So, and that keeps growing. So that has really been, as we say a million times, a silver lining of COVID, of kind of decentralizing this information, that your care should not be based on where you were born, where you currently live. Everybody should have access to at least this information, and then find providers to help. But
exactly,
well said.
Yep.
So, Steve, you want to bring us home?
You brought us home. Now I'll bring us home.
Well, anyway, we were like 10 miles away from home.
Yes. We're closer now.
Everyone, thanks for listening, and please do check out our website where we have a lot more information. And Jennie, now that she's moving to San Diego, where our studio is located, we're going to have her on many more times. And don't forget, June 18th is our next virtual conference.
Yes. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to the TCOID podcast, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.